This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dalen. It's another week. It's another victorious Arizona week. 16-0, Shane. In your wildest dreams, honestly, would you have ever imagined that the Wildcats would still be undefeated in mid-January?
Well, not just undefeated, but how they're doing it. I mean, it's almost, and this is, please don't take this the wrong way, anyone listening or watching, but it's almost getting a little boring in the best way. It's just like we're not sweating these games either. I mean, TCU made a bit of a run, and TCU's a good team, so that was okay. But it's amazing to see a team that not just keep winning, but be this dominant. I mean, Michigan, which I thought was probably looked the best over the beginning of the season, had two head scratchers of games last week, almost losing to Penn State and then losing at home to an unranked Wisconsin team. But the ease in which Arizona keeps winning, it's almost like what do we talk about? We talked before the show started. What do we talk about? We talk about how great Koa Pete is, how great Jaden Bradley is. That there's some minor issues here and there, but you can't. I mean, the only minor concern maybe is Tope Awaka getting hurting his ankle a little bit, but it looked like he was fine at the end of the game. So
yep.
Again, I said it before. I wish we could bottle this up until March, but we can't, and so I think we'll enjoy it for as long as we can.
It's fun because I'm putting together the show, and I'm like, what do we talk? Like football, we're like, oh, that was so disappointing. We're used to that, right? During the fall. Oh, that was a tough one. What could Arizona do better? Buy or sell? And I'm not saying, I think it's a tough game for Arizona on the road this weekend at UCF, and we'll make picks later in the show.
They got another game before that. I forget.
But we're gonna have Muehlebach on. Matt Muehlebach's gonna join us in the second segment, and I have a pretty good feeling, Shane. Probably not gonna ask him about either of these opponents, ASU and Central Florida this week. Well, it's just not. I mean, in February we can do that when you have the murderer's row of BYU, Iowa State, Houston, Kansas. Like right now, you're like,
Well, and UCF could be a tough game as well. And look, last week, you, me, and Blair Willis all thought the TCU game was going to be a nail biter.
Yes, we did.
And look, with like 7 or 8 minutes left, it looked like, okay, maybe it is going to come down to that. But I almost feel like Arizona's toying with teams at this point. TCU gets within single digits a couple times, and they just go on an 8-0 run, and the U of A fans who infiltrate every visiting arena go crazy, and that's that. They will slip up at some point. It could be as soon as this weekend at UCF. I'm not discounting that. More likely, the next really big test after that would be against BYU. They're not going to go undefeated, even if they keep playing their best. Iowa State's great. Houston's great. They play BYU twice. But I feel like this is kind of a 3-act play this season. They had the non-conference schedule where you had that gauntlet. You had some easy games in between, but you had the big six. Then we're in the middle of the second act right now, which is the not so difficult portion of the Big 12 schedule, at least on paper. And then Act 3 is going to be I think a gauntlet's going to be even tougher than what Arizona faced at the beginning of the season.
All right, so let's get right into buy or sell, because this is a pretty good segue. Mm-hmm. So Arizona is 16-0 with 15 regular season games to play. Buy or sell the 10-5 in those 15 games would be good enough to earn them a 1 seed. And I'm gonna just give this the caveat that I think there's a lot of really good teams this year.
Yeah,
Iowa State, UConn, Michigan, Purdue, Duke, Houston. Gonzaga, BYU, throw in Vanderbilt, throw in Nebraska. I mean, there's a lot of teams that could be in the mix here for 1 seeds. Is 10-5 good enough?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would be close, and of course, it depend on, in part, who those losses were to. So if they go 10-5 the rest of the way, that means they go 13-5 in the Big 12. They might end up third or fourth in the conference with that record. And I don't know this.
You're not getting a 1 seed.
No, I don't know the selection committee would put a third or fourth place team in as a 1 seed, even as good as the Big 12 is. So, like, I know you like these kinds of questions, and it's just as good a topic to debate as anything right now. But I think it's just an impossible one to answer right now because there are so many variables, including, like you mentioned, there are at least 3 teams in the Big 12 that ultimately might compete for a 1 seed as well. Iowa State is definitely in as of now. And then BYU, Houston. And I know you got a follow-up question just so I won't go too deep into the weeds here, but I think this year that is probably more top-heavy than most years in terms of that competition. I think in most years Arizona would be far and away the top seed, but then you look at the net rankings, and Ken Palm still have Michigan number one. I think Arizona should be ranked number one in the AP and coaches polls, and they are. But based on the metrics, it's still very, very competitive, and so they've got a long haul. And I think if Tommy Lloyd were to get asked this question, he would probably get a very dirty look back.
All right. So let's talk about the Big 12, Shane. So if you were to break it down into 5 tiers, elite, good or great, good, so, terrible. I don't care about tier 4 and tier 5 because they're not making the tournament.
Yeah.
Why don't you break down your tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, how you would do it?
Yeah, I think first tier are the teams that, as of Monday night, as we're recording, are 3-0 in the conference, which is Arizona, Iowa State, Houston, and BYU.
Okay. Yeah.
I think Texas Tech is kind of in a tier of its own right now. Not quite as good as those top 4, but better than the rest by a decent margin. With, I think, the potential to play up to that top tier, and certainly we've seen glimpses of that already, like when they won at Duke. Or it was a neutral site game against Duke, but still very impressive. I think all 5 of those teams are all capable of getting to the Final Four, but the top 4 probably have a bit more margin for error at this point. And then after that, the next tier I think is NCAA tournament teams, which is Kansas, UCF, and TCU in whatever order you want to put them.
So you're putting Tech in, you put Tech in the first tier.
No. I have Texas Tech in a tier of its own. The top tier is okay. The top tier is Arizona, Houston, BYU, Iowa State. Okay. And then Texas Tech is in the Texas Tech tier. That's tier. Okay. That's in a tier of its own. I think they're in that class by itself. I'm not going to lump them in with the top 4. I'm not going to lump them in with the 3 below them. Kansas, I mean, you take the name away. I think they've looked very exceptionally average at times, and part of that is because of injuries. And TCU really, they completely blew that game against Kansas. So you have those 3 teams, which I think are all NCAA tournament caliber teams. And then you have a tier after that, which are teams that could probably still get in, like Oklahoma State, which started off hot, but they've cooled off. They started off hot partly because of an easy schedule. Maybe Baylor, even though they're off to a 0-3 start in the conference, which is maybe a little bit of karma. We'll have to see how that plays out. And then after that, you got a bunch of teams that aren't likely to make the tournament. I think Utah's at the very bottom. ASU is probably down there as well. But I think the top 3 tiers, you have those big 4, all of the 4 teams that are 3-0 in the conference right now. Texas Tech in a tier of its own, and then the next 3, Kansas, UCF, and TCU.
So the only difference that I would have, Shane, I agree that Arizona, Iowa State, BYU, and Houston are the elite. I would put Kansas in tier 2 with Texas Tech. I think they'll right the ship once Peterson is healthy, Darren Peterson. I think after that, I mean, it's just a crapshoot with the Oklahoma State, Baylor. I know, as you mentioned, they're off to a bad start. TCU, UCF. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe West Virginia, maybe Colorado. We know that ASU, Cincinnati, and Utah are the bottom. I don't know what to make of Kansas State. I've seen them look good, but they were, to lose at ASU is pathetic. My tier 3, I need to see more of these teams. But I think you're right that the top 4 are in a separate tier, and then I'm just putting Kansas and Texas Tech in that tier 2.
Isn't it interesting though? This is really the second straight year now that Kansas is underachieved, and again, I know injuries play a part in it, but last year they were, were they a 7 seed in the NCAA tournament? And this year they're looking to be kind of on the same track. And I do expect them to improve, but I think we expected that last year too, and it never happened. So
Right.
maybe it's a trend with Kansas. We'll have to wait and see.
So we'll talk a little bit more Arizona basketball later in the show. I mean, listen, things are on cruise control. I don't want to jinx us and say something stupid, so we'll just kind of let
There'll
that.
be a bump in the road eventually, and we'll address it when it happens. I don't think we're getting
Yes.
arrogant about it, but it's just at this
No,
point, it's like,
it's a good
what are you
format.
going to say? Yeah.
Yeah. So Arizona women's basketball, they're 10-6 with 12 games to play. Shane, I'm putting the over under. Now that Michaela Purdue's arguably their best player, now that she is out for
Yeah.
an indefinite amount of time, putting the over under in the regular season final 12 games at 2.5. Taking the over the under.
Yeah, I'll take the over still, even though it's going to be even tougher now that Mickey Purdue's out with an injury that may keep her out for. I mean, just based on the post she made on social, it sounds like it probably is a season-ending injury, or at least could be. She's been Arizona's leading scorer, best player by a pretty good margin most of the year. One of my bold predictions for 2026 that you made me make. No, you didn't make me make this one, but you made me make some bold predictions.
I did.
It was that they would win. The women's basketball team would win at least 6 conference games. They almost pulled off a second one the other night, so they may not get to 6. I think they'll find a way to scrape together at least 3 more wins. Although
Great.
I don't
Okay.
think it's going to come at number 10 TCU on Saturday. I think that's going to be an ugly game, but I think they'll find a way to piece together at least 3 more.
Okay. All right. I Becky Burke is doing a fine job, but this is
Yes.
going to be really a tough bat. I'd kind of be surprised. I'd put them at 2-10 the rest of the way. I hope I'm wrong, but I've been wrong because I've been wrong before. So I didn't think they'd get. I put 8.5 for the whole year, 9.5, and something like that. I was wrong. So continue to prove me wrong. It's great. I think next year you're going to see this team take a big step forward. But I also was not a fan of playing every non-conference game at home. I just
Yeah.
don't love that. Last one in buy or sell. So the average age of Indiana's football team is 23 years old, which is wild considering the Green Bay Packers. I don't want to talk about it, Shane. Their average age is 25. So
Yeah.
going forward, this is what Arizona should strive to be instead of recruiting necessarily a bunch of guys out of high school.
Packers should have kept Lucas Havrisik, huh?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to throw
Thank you.
that in there.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
okay. Well, I think Arizona's already doing it to an extent. I couldn't find the stat. I looked it up after I knew we were going to talk about this, but I saw a stat that Arizona was in the top 10 nationally in average player age this past season.
And that makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot of that had to do with the transfers who had just one season of eligibility left. I think that's a big deal because I think it's natural that you're more likely to be not just a better player, but a leader on the team with that kind of experience. And Arizona's losing a lot of leadership from this year's team, and replacing that, I think, is as important as replacing the talent itself. So I like what Arizona's done in the portal so far. They've secured some experienced players with 1 or maybe 2 years left of eligibility who have had success at smaller programs for the most part, but definitely look like they have a lot of upside. But I also like that they've grabbed some younger guys who came out of high school as 4-star recruits. And realistically, this is how a program like Arizona is going to get those kinds of players. They're bringing in a handful of 4-star guys out of high school. They already are, like Oscar Rios, quarterback coming in as a 4-star guy, but they're also bringing in athletes who were 4 stars out of high school, but didn't see the field much in their first season at another school, like DJ Jordan, wide receiver transfer from USC. Arizona's not going to land those kinds of guys in droves out of high school because they just won't be able to compete, including an NIL. And I saw a stat that Indiana had 8 4 or 5-star guys on their team this year, and Oregon had 55. So that tells you what coaching can do. But Arizona can go to these guys after they have a year of experience. Maybe they're disappointed they haven't seen much playing time at the big school they chose to play at. They can tell those guys, look, come to Arizona, and we'll keep coaching you, developing you, and you'll have a better chance to play next season. And now the coaching staff can back up that talk because they're coming off a 9-win season. So I like the strategy. I like what we've seen so far. Bring in some experience and leadership, but also get some guys who might have underwhelmed in their freshman year, but still might have a lot of upside. But yeah, absolutely. I love being one of the older programs year in, year out, one of the older teams, I think is going to be an advantage more often than not.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged with what I'm seeing. You know, you just don't know with these guys until they actually play on the field. But they're getting guys. I mean, you're getting two guys from USC. You know, you're beating Florida State for a couple of commits. Like
Yep.
this is what you want to see. Like Arizona beating out Florida State. If I had told you that a year and a half ago, Shay, a year ago, that Arizona was going to beat out Florida State for multiple recruits, you've been like,
Yeah.
I mean, I know Florida State's had some bad years, but they're Florida States. They're Florida State,
Yeah.
you know?
And I
So
remember something that Matt Moreno told us a while ago. I think around the time that Brent Brennan was named the head coach at Arizona, was that even when he was at San Jose State, he was in the mix often for a lot of some pretty talented players who had like their other finalists were big name power schools, and San Diego or San Jose State rather would not land most of those when he was there, but he'd be in the mix for them. And that
right.
so that was a good sign. And now it's kind of the same thing here, except you're not going to be able to compete with some of these bigger programs, especially with NIL, revenue sharing, whatever you want to call it. But you said, look, we have a good track record. You want some playing time, we'll develop you. We did it last year. Talk to these guys, they'll tell you, and come to Arizona and you'll have a better chance to play. And I think I like the fact that they're probably more likely just to get some more high character guys who are looking for that kind of experience simply because they won't be able to compete in terms of money. They're guys who want to get paid, but maybe want to get paid in the NFL and see more of the long-term value versus just, getting a bag in a single season.
And I think we're going to get separately, I think we'll get a Big 12 schedule in the next 2 weeks for next year so we can break down what Arizona's, record looks like. But I think at this point with what this team is doing, if they don't win 6, 7 games, probably 7 games, I think 7-5, have another winning season,
Agree.
and Noah's career at Arizona on a high note. I think that's what I'm looking to do. I think, an underrated pickup, by the way, Drew Nicholson, a long snapper.
Yeah.
We were talking about Salgado Medina, and how rough he was, and apparently snaps were a big part of the issue. So getting a veteran long snapper, like they brought in a couple of punters,
Yeah.
that warms my heart, Shane.
Oh
Like
yeah.
to see that.
Big deal. Yeah. Big deal. And I mean, their first three transfers, or two of their first three, were tight ends. So they addressed that very quickly. And, again, it's a combination of guys with really good numbers at smaller programs and guys who didn't get to play much, but were heralded out of high school, who
And
have a lot
that's
of
what I
eligibility.
want. Those are the guys. I mean, I know there's the Justin Flows of the world that don't live up to
Yeah.
the hype, but that is what I'm looking for. I
Right.
want I want the bigger name guys who are, out of high school. All right, Shane, what do you got in terms of standouts this week?
Yeah, we're revving up out into the winter and spring season. A lot of different sports coming up. Haven't even gotten to baseball and softball yet, but track and field. Shout out to senior Emma Gates, who I think we mentioned at least once last year. She won gold in the high jump at the Axum indoor meet at NAU. Lumberjacks, Axe, yeah. All right. She had a jump of 1.89 meters, which is the best in the NCAA this season. So, congrats to Emma on that. The Gym Cats won their season opener against Washington with Ainsley Griever, Audrey Kronfeld, Abigail Martin, and Hillary Paleo all winning individual events. And then Abigail, who's a junior, also won the all around with a score of 39.225. So congrats to the Gym Cats. We've got to have John Cord on the show at some point. He's awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, I like John Court. Good dude.
Women's swim team beat NAU at a meet in Tucson. Shout out to senior Riley Botten, who won first place in the 50 and 100-yard freestyle events and the 400 freestyle relay. And sophomore Elise Clift also won a pair of individual events, the 200 and 500-yard freestyle, and she was a part of that first place relay team as well. And finally, for the last time in a while, one more time for Tataroa McMillan. Had a 1,000-yard rookie regular season, then 5 catches for 81 yards, and what ended up being a surprisingly fantastic game between the Panthers
Really
and the Rams.
good. Yep.
Carolina came up short, but T-Mac looks like the real deal at the pro level. He could end up being a pretty high pick in a lot of fantasy drafts next season. So congrats, T-Mac, and many more years of success to come.
As always, Wildcat Country is glad to be sponsored by Harrah's Auction Casino. And did you know that Harrah's Auction Casino is your key to nationwide fun? Unlock perks at more than 50 destinations from coast to coast at your local home for Caesars Rewards. Free dining in Atlantic City, Vegas, or New Orleans. Yes, free slot play in Maricopa absolutely free hotel stays from coast to coast. Oh yeah, get rewarded for all the ways you play at the official sponsor Play Harrah's Auction Casino. Caesars Rewards is the nation's #1 players card, and Harrah's Auction is the only local casino that has it. Coming up next, our buddy Matt Muehlebach joins us here on Wildcat Country. Shane, Arizona, as we know, is 16-0, and there's nobody better to bring on the program than the great Mr. Triple Double, Matt Muehlebach, who not only is a color analyst, but he does play-by-play as well. And the stupid ESPN Plus didn't work for me, and I couldn't watch it against Bethune-Cookman. All right, Matt, let's start off. Before we talk about Reggie Theus later in the interview, because we have to, I want to ask you, 16-0. I asked you the last time we were on. You got to lose sometime, right? You don't want to pull a Gonzaga and go into the tournament undefeated, right?
Right. Of course. And they will. I mean, I think, right? Yeah. I mean, I actually thought there was a decent chance they'd lose to TCU. You know, TCU, I think they had Michigan. They were down right around 2 with very little time against them. They had Kansas beaten at Kansas, and they lost that one. So I'm thinking, you know, sold out crowd. I did the U of A game, let's see, what was that, a week and a half ago in Utah. And we'd already heard from some Big 12 people that game was sold out against TCU. So I'm thinking, you know, they play physical. It's a good physical matchup for Arizona. If anything, they could lose or it's going to be really close. And I don't know what to say. But right now, the way they're playing, they almost really have no weaknesses. You know, and the one thing that's maybe the most surprising, and it's not because of like this team or anybody, but just any team you see always has letdowns. And that's what's been so surprising to me. They really haven't had a letdown.
Yeah, I think I tweeted the other day, you know, I love and I hate that they're playing this well in January. And I think every Wildcat fan knew exactly what I meant by that. Matt, who's the best player on this team?
Well, you want the most valuable or the
however
best
you
player?
want to define it.
The most valuable is Jaden Bradley.
Okay.
I think Jaden Bradley should be getting Big 12 Player of the Year discussions.
Agree.
I think Jaden Bradley should be getting, I don't know what other awards there are out there. I mean, is he the best player in the country? Like that's like the Wooden Award. I probably wouldn't go there because there's better players, you know, that are going to be top 5 picks and people like that. But from a most valuable, to me, it's Jaden Bradley. He's been the missing piece really since TJ McConnell. I think he's the best point guard since TJ McConnell. And I in some ways, I think he's the best point guard going even further back. Like maybe like I'm trying to think, like almost like Jason Terry, you know, like, I mean, he's really good. He's the glue that keeps him together. He's super unselfish. I mean, he scores when they need it. He doesn't really look to score until they need it. He did that. I saw him live against UCLA. He won the game, him and Del Orso. But he's consistent and he's a two-way player.
If there's something, were you gonna add to that? I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah,
I mean the best player on the team, like literally, like if you're saying like, okay, who's the best NBA prospect? I mean, it's probably Koa Pete. You know, Burries is not far behind if he's even behind. I mean, Burries has really come on. Obviously, he was surprising early that, you know, we heard so many good things about him, and he didn't have the numbers, but he's been really spectacular. I'll tell you what, Krivas is also. I talk to these coaches, and I'll just ask people like, what do you see on tape? You know, when you see Arizona, or what do you? A lot of times, Krivas is one of the first names that comes up. You know, they're just stunned by his size and effectiveness, and so there's a few guys, but I really my take is JB.
One of my favorite things that Fran Fraschilla, we've had on the show a few times, said during the TCU game is Arizona's go-to guy is whoever has the ball or whoever's open. I think is what he said. I love that because it's true with Arizona. If you had to identify like an area or areas of improvement, because I know there aren't many, even though you always want to get better every day, what would you really focus on? Is there any concern, potential Achilles heel at this point for Arizona?
Yeah, we did it. There's a lot of times I've done games right after New Year's, and they'll, a standard go-to will be, what are the New Year's resolutions of this team? And I didn't know what I didn't even put we didn't even put one together because I didn't even know what it would be for Arizona. I mean, I think it's just, as they say, rinse and repeat, um, chop wood and carry water. I mean, just like whatever the phrases are, just keep doing the same thing and fine tune it, and just keep that consistency. Because I don't know what else I would say.
How do you, just to follow up on that real quick, how do you, like, if you're Tommy Lloyd, you put yourself in Tommy Lloyd's shoes, how do you keep challenging these guys? Because everyone's working to get better. Arizona still needs to keep improving so no one
Yeah.
catches them. How do you, like, if you, from a coach's perspective, I know you're not a coach, but still, how do you keep challenging these guys and let them know, hey, we got to keep getting better because everyone else is too?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as the team stuff, you can bring out the Nick Saban rat poison, with all the, all the accolades and the newspaper clippings or whatever. But, I think one thing he does, and I saw this with Koa Pete. He did this right before I had their game, a week and a half ago. He challenged Koa Pete to sort of rebound, like let's be a little more rebound focused, and your rebound numbers could be a little better. And so he challenged him personally. And the next game he had 14 rebounds. So, I mean, that's the other thing about this team. They have so far, I mean, one of the maybe top things I'd say on their bucket list is their coachability.
Yeah.
They've been extremely coachable individually and as a team. And when you can do that and have a coach kind of challenge you, that's how you keep that. That's how you keep getting after it, right? And so if your best player, can get challenged and you get to get on him about rebounds, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, it's just the sky's the limit then. And I think he's doing that individually with each guy. Like he probably has his little, I don't know, with every guy, right? But who's the kid, CD Gay, who's kind of the ninth man. He really challenged him for like a 2 week period to kind of get better and like, hey, we may need you in a spot or two or more. You never know.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was cool that he found that little kind of like, area to challenge someone in. And I'm sure he's doing it with other guys. And back to the Pete thing, the funny thing is when I heard that, I'm like, part of the problem with anybody's rebounds is you got to walk out there. So how do you get rebounds from your own guy? Because there was some stat I read that he gets like 30% of the rebounds when he's on the floor. All rebounds out there. That's
Insane.
an insane
Yeah.
statistic
Hmm.
that no one in the country is even close to. And so he's gobbling up his own team's rebounds. But so I think that's it. You just kind of keep challenge, you keep the clutter out as much as possible. It's hard to do these days. But when you're number one for this amount of time, I remember in '88 when we were number one, it was super cool the first week or two because it had never happened at U of A. And that was something that I'm not saying it was hard for us to deal with, but it was something that wasn't simple because it was new. And but I remember after a while, the more we did it, the more it just became like, okay, that's just it's not that it's I mean it is a big deal, but you kind of just focused on your stuff and I don't think it ever hurt us later on. It wasn't like this one like one and done 1 week and then it went away. And so to some degree, the longevity of it, then they get comfortable with it.
Yeah, and I think for me, what I'm concerned about at this point is how do you keep the number one seed in the West? And Shane and I talked about
Yeah.
this earlier in the show. So you're seeing a lot of good teams. The Iowa State is still undefeated. They're number two, Connecticut, Michigan, Houston, BYU. We can go down the line. What does Arizona have to do before the tournament to hold on to that one seed in the West?
Well, I mean, I guess it's dependent, right, on other teams and how they do. And I mean, I could see a scenario where there's at least a couple teams from the Big 12 getting that the 1 seed. So I guess the way I would answer that, that's a good question. I've never thought of that, but I guess I'd probably answer it like if you're in the top one or two, during the season, in the Big 12, you're probably looking at a 1 seed.
Yeah, but then you look at, all right, so look at other teams. I mean, who's going to get the one in the West? Like for me, the dream scenario is Arizona the one, Gonzaga the two, because I'm not
Yeah,
sold on Gonzaga as much as some other people. But when you look at the others out there, Iowa State, Houston, UConn, BYU, I mean, there's a lot of scary teams. And
yeah.
like, can Arizona lose 4 games between now and the middle of March and still get a 1 seed in all likelihood?
Maybe. Yeah, depending on who they lose to and where, right? Because they've already got in their bag all of those wins against they've already got the Yukon win, right? And so they got that they can already go to. And if Yukon's up there, they can already say, well, we beat Yukon on their home floor.
It's
Um
true.
and,
Yeah.
and so I think it just look, I mean, I think you bring up a good point. I guess the thing that also makes me think about is to some degree, like you almost wish the tournament, to your point, Shane, earlier, it's like you almost wish the tournament was tomorrow. Like
Right.
let's line it up right now and play.
Yeah.
They are what, 2 games into the conference? Is that
Three
right?
now.
Or
Three.
Three.
3 games.
Three.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're 3 games into the conference, and it's what, is it a 19 game schedule? I can't remember what it
18.
is.
It's 18.
18.
We're right at the
18 game
halfway
schedule,
point of
yeah.
the season, basically.
So they're it's a marathon from
Yeah.
here on out. And so I think, I don't know, in some ways, I mean, they're not thinking about the ones. I know it's the discussion for us, and it's a
Yeah.
good discussion because the simple odds of the NCAA tournament when you're a one versus any other number go way up. Um, and so it is important. But that February schedule, we've all looked at it. It's a gauntlet, right? And so we'll see when that comes. And what's look, those guys obviously are thinking 1 game at a time, and road games, and they're thinking ASU Wednesday.
Yeah.
Um,
If we asked that question to Tommy Lloyd in the press
oh,
conference, he'd kick us
he
out.
yeah, it would be the rat poison
Right.
comment. It would be say, but it's fun for us to talk about it.
Yeah. I know. Eric likes to play all the scenarios out.
I love this. I love it. Yeah.
I think about it too. I just try not to get obsessed about it.
I just want to point this out, Shane. So
Yeah.
Lenardi, his bracket, and this was updated the other day. So before Michigan lost,
Yeah.
Arizona the one, Gonzaga the two, BYU the three, Arkansas four, Kansas five. I mean, that's an incredible draw for Arizona getting into the Elite Eight, facing the winner of
Yeah.
Arkansas, Kansas in that scenario. And then you have BYU, Gonzaga, and I mean, that is what that's why I'm saying you have to focus on getting that 1 seed in the West, in my
Well,
opinion.
but the best way to do it is
Well,
just to keep doing what
Keep
they've
winning.
been doing.
yeah, you do what you do. I'll say this too. Like I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about the fact of this quote isn't exactly for this, but it sort of fits a little bit. There was a great quote in The Office where I can't remember which character says, "Wouldn't it be great to know the good old days when you were actually in the good old days and they were happening,
Mhm.
instead of just looking backward saying, oh, those were the good old days." And it made me think a little bit about Arizona. Like it's cool to live in the moment and appreciate how cool this is
Yeah.
to wake up
Yeah.
every Monday and see the number one next to your name. To be beat, they win. They tied the 28-29 team. They won, 8 games by 20 or more. I mean, just to every game that comes up, I'm with you guys. Look, don't get me wrong. The NCAA is a funky system because the tournament has so much weight
Yeah.
to a team's success. And let's just call it what it is. But I also am enjoying the heck out of like every game in the season and watching this team just keep plugging away, and not plug away. That's the wrong term, but bulldozing away, right? And so it's fun. I'm kind of living in the moment for it.
Yeah, and you know what, Matt? I that's something I think me and a lot of fans need to hear because it's true. They can't win. They can't get to the Final Four today or tomorrow. They can
Right.
only do what's in front of them. And they, like you said, they're number one in the country. LeBron James is wearing U of A sneakers on the basketball court. I mean, their brand is never as I don't know if it's ever been this hot. Maybe not since you played or since the '97 team that won the national championship. So I think it is. While I think a lot of
Yeah,
us are saying, yes, we got to get back to the Final Four. It is okay to live in the moment and enjoy what we're seeing because it's special.
it
Even
is.
the best teams in the country aren't ranked number one for this long.
We'd have to go back and look at the date. You remember when Clockers, the movie, came out in the 90s? And there was a movie that came out in the 90s called Clockers. And I think that's the name. We'd have to look it up. But Damon Stoudemire, the guy in the movie, wore the Stoudemire jersey. And if you remember, I think his name is Jaleel White,
Yeah,
was the actor,
Urkel.
and went to Lutz camps and he wore Stoudemire's jersey to the Final Four in '94. When they had Stoudemire, Reeves, it was on the heels of a lot of great years. '88 was the first Final Four. That's when that Zona name, that brand started to become, nationally respected. Point guard U started to become a theme, a thing. You know what's funny? Nobody said point guard U with Jaden Bradley. I haven't heard that come up.
Hmm.
And
That's a good point.
you know,
Yeah.
and it probably should, but anyway, yeah, I'm all look, term is special and important, but I'm enjoying it right now.
All right, Matt, I got two more for you. I want to ask you about Dwayne
Yeah.
Aristode because I feel like we've seen glimpses of how good he could be. And I think even with his injuries going into this and how long he hadn't played going into the season, I think we'd see more of him simply if the guys in front of him weren't as good as they are. Do you think that, assuming that, uh, well, I guess, but do you think he's going to continue to improve this season? And if he's back next year, do you think he could be one of the top guys on the team? Because I think the little of what I've seen of him, I really like.
I think he could. Yeah, I think if to that point, if there's anyone on the team that would have like a margin of improvement between now and March, it might be him. He might lead the pack. Um, and he played a game. I think it might have been the Bethune-Cookman game, or it may have been the game after that. I can't remember who Arizona played. South Dakota State played right before the New Year, right after Christmas. And the coaches were mentioning his stats were kind of okay that game, but they mentioned that it was maybe his best game of the year. Why? Because he was really in the right positions. Defensively, he wasn't thinking about where to be. He sort of just naturally showed up in the positions they needed him to be, and it was sort of like really starting to get, the offense. It's almost like a quarterback when they say the playbook starts to become kind of, in his back pocket instead of thinking about the playbook.
Mm.
And I thought that was a big sign because you can tell, to your point, Shane, that you can tell that the year off, sometimes you could really tell that in October, November hurt him, taking a full year off and not being able to, he's still trying to figure out his body in basketball, kind of put it all together.
Yeah.
Now he's putting the team stuff, figuring all those X's and O's out and all that. And I think the more he figures that out, look, he's a dynamic shooter, like dynamic. He can make shots at a high volume in terms of catch and shoot or off he's a three-point shooting specialist right now, which I think can really help this team. I think you're going to start seeing the other things appear, right? Some putbacks, some offensive rebounds, some creativity. That's the part that I don't think has been able to come out yet because of some of the background and playing time and all that. But
Right.
I'm looking forward to it. He seems
Yeah.
like a good kid. And I'll just add to that point. He's huge. I keep forgetting he's like a legit 6'7", like almost 6'8". Like he's really big and tall. His length is a factor. It blows me away when I walk up next to him.
It's the second straight time we've had you on, Matt, where you've said 6'7". The last time I showed my 6-year-old and it cracked him up, so I'll have to show him again.
Sorry,
No,
sorry.
no, no, no. It's all good. All good.
I got two teenagers.
Yeah, we get. No, I get it. I get it. All right, last question for you, Matt. I appreciate your time as always. I want to ask you about Caleb Love and his success in Portland. I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised. I know that he obviously he can be a great shooter. Do you think that he could carve out a future for himself in the NBA as an undrafted player, just kind of like TJ McConnell has?
Yeah, no question. And I think it's for a few reasons. One, he's just so athletic. Like he fits in that league and the possessions they play. And I didn't think he would make shots at this clip. I'm a little surprised at that. I know he could make shots, but and I just think his confidence, man, he's just he believes. And that league more than almost anything is if you, especially if you're on the bubble, you've just got to believe in yourself. I remember, and I had some health issues before I got to had a chance to play and try out, and I had a bunch of NBA tryouts, but I remember a kid I played against in high school that, would have been a bubble guy, John Barry, but John had an incredible belief in himself and carved out an incredible niche. And I remember playing against him, and I thought, we were very similar players, and he probably thought he was better than me. I thought I was better than him, but we played against each other from like third grade on, and because he was a Bay Area kid.
Wow.
But I remember how like his belief system, and it's what separated him with those bubble players, and that to me is what separates Caleb.
All right, last one for you. This is kind of off the beaten path, but you had a chance to do the Bethune-Cookman game that you did play-by-play and got to obviously talk to Reggie Theus, who's always been semi-entertaining. Shane and I have talked about how we watched him on TV in the 90s as a coach on TV. Who are your favorite coaches when you're doing a game to talk with before the game, just to kind of Tommy Lloyd, I
Yeah.
cannot imagine is one of them, honestly, but I'm
Yeah.
curious who you would say are your favorites.
That's a great question. I mean, I will say a lot of times the mid-major guys are just in general some of my favorites because you realize when they play Arizona, they know they're probably going to get, they're probably going to get it. They're hoping, I mean, they're believing, but they know in the back of their mind. And so a lot of those guys are just like they want to talk to us, right? And if we're on Peacock or FS1 or sometimes those are their opportunities to really get a national audience. Um, and so they want to tell their story. They want to tell everything about their team. They want the world to know, like, and they want to give you as much as they can. So those guys are amazing. Like Reggie was amazing. He talked to Corey and I. He could have talked for a half hour and just went on and on about, he's also the AD at Bethune-Cookman, which is wild. And he was just saying how, he gets it. Like he knows he's a coach himself, so he knows what it's like in those rooms. And so let me give you a couple guys
Okay.
and I'll give you a couple that also might surprise you. Tommy's great with me. He
Okay.
he he talks smack to me. He's
Oh.
like, if I like in a good way, he's like, what do you need? Like he's like, if you really prepare, you'd have your question. You don't need my, you don't need to ask me anything. He just does that for fun, but he's great. He's always very accessible. Bobby Hurley's always great with me. I've known Bobby since I played against him twice in college. He's always
Hmm.
great with me and gives me good stuff. You know who was great with me? I had a game with him once this year, and he was very like fun to talk to, and we talked about basketball and we talked about like kind of on the periphery. We talked about a bunch of coaches and people we knew and stuff. Was Mick Cronin. He was great.
Mm,
He was
mm,
really like
mm.
easy to talk to and like just like I said, we were talking about his mentor Rick Pitino, and we talked a lot about just some different things that weren't even really totally basketball related. Um, I'm trying to think, I've a lot of those Pac-12 coaches I worked for years, Tad Boyle was really good with me.
Mm.
Wayne Tinkle was
Oh
awesome.
yeah. That's
Eric's
that's a
favorite.
favorite of my, yeah,
Amazing.
that's my favorite coach in,
Yeah.
in college basketball.
Kyle
Shane knows.
Kyle Smith is a fun guy to talk
Mm,
to, the Stanford coach, because he's so
mm.
into analytics and you can ask him a million questions about different things.
Will you
And
give us a least favorite coach? Is it maybe somebody that
That might be a better off-air
I don't know. I
question.
don't know if you can do it, Matt. I just figure, is there somebody
yeah,
that you're like, okay,
when
yeah, I
when
just
Shane puts hits the stop button for sure.
okay, fair enough. Okay, good stuff.
One thing I'll say about him is all these coaches are CEOs of multi-million dollar corporations, basically. Especially the Big 12 coaches or my, former Pac-12 coaches I'd cover, right? And most of the time, I'm talking, 90+% of the time, I walk away incredibly impressed with almost, like I said, almost everyone.
Hmm.
And it like from the lowest to the highest kind of ranking because what they have to go through and get those jobs, they're all really like Coach Kristoviak was amazing with me. Like he was that guy was awesome to talk to. He was one of my favorite for sure. But no, they're all just amazingly impressive
Good.
about all the things they're juggling.
Yeah, because you see these perceptions of guys like Hurley and Mick Cronin's one that Shane and I have talked about plenty,
Hmm.
where you're like, these guys are obnoxious and on the sidelines, but I'm glad to know that they're good guys. Cronin, Shane, you have thoughts on
Oh, I
Cronin.
don't. Well, no, I have never actually met Cronin. Bobby Hurley, I interacted with a lot during my time at ABC 15, and he was always great with me. So I have nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he switches gears as soon as the game starts, which I'm sure all coaches do to a certain extent. But yeah, I've had nothing but positive experiences with him.
He is the best of the
Yeah.
best. Matt Muehlebach, as always. Thanks for hanging out with us. Great insight. We always like to throw random questions, or at least I do, against the wall.
That's a good one.
And you're always a good sport for answering them, so always appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
All right, always great to catch up with Matt, Shane. Let's make a pick on the final college football game of 2025-26, the national championship game. I had Miami last week. You had Indiana. We went 1-1. You're up by 9 games. You crushed me on the year. Shane, I am not going to make the same mistake again. I think Indiana rolls the Hurricanes. As much as I want Miami to win the national title, I'm done picking against Indiana. My favorite play is the under in the game. I think Indiana's defense is legit. I think Miami's defense will hang in for a while and then give it up late. Indiana 27, Miami 13, and they cover the 8.5. What do you say?
Well, real quick, tell us about your Fiesta Bowl experience because you were there rooting for your parents' alma mater.
Yeah, it was really a wild day from hail at the pregame, and just 80% Ole Miss fans. It's just a great football game. I mean, the first quarter was dull, the second quarter was fun, the third quarter was okay, and the fourth quarter was phenomenal. And it was just the Fiesta Bowl has been very, very lucky. The 3 semifinals they've had, which I've been to all of them, Ohio State, Clemson, which came down to the last drive, Michigan, TCU, which was very close late,
Right.
and then this game, which was great. So they've been very, very fortunate. It was a great football game. Miami, I guess, had 20 sick players with the flu.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't think that mattered against Ole Miss, but I think Indiana is they're just
Yeah.
playing at another level, Shane.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I will, as crazy as this sentence is, I will take Indiana to win the national championship in college football. I'm still wrapping my head around that. I do think, though, I disagree with you. I think it's going to be a very close game.
Really?
I feel like Miami is they're looking as good as they did beginning of the season when they were very highly ranked, and their defense is very good as well. I think it's going to come down to the last minute. I'm going to take Indiana to win, but I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I'm thinking like a 24-20 kind of game with Indiana winning. So they don't cover, but I think the Hoosiers win the national championship.
Well, unbelievable. I mean, Kurt Signetti, and it just shows, you get the right players in. I mean, you can't. I mean, Kurt Signetti is another level. You can't compare Brent Brennan to Kurt Signetti, but he's done a great job. Brent got 9 wins.
Brent does smile more than Kurt does, though.
He does, but Kurt also plays with media. He's just brilliant with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
he is.
dude's brilliant. So, all right, college basketball. We're going to switch it up the rest of the season. We did this last year. Shane, give me an unranked Big 12 road win. A team that is not obviously in the top 25, which is hard to find in the Big 12, who's going to win on the road this weekend.
You go first. I'm going to do a quick look here.
I am going with TCU at Utah. I do not make much of the Utah Utes. They are down towards the bottom of the Big 12 standings. TCU, I think, is better than the way they played against Arizona. So I'm going to take them to beat Utah. You have anything, or you want to come back to that?
An unranked road win can that be against any team, or does it have to be a top 25 team? Or
Just a team. We'll just say an unranked team to win on the road.
Okay, well, we'll go with Colorado over West Virginia. Colorado's kind of a wild card. They didn't look great, and they played in Phoenix before Arizona and San Diego State. But I think Tad Boyle's team finds a way to get it done.
How about a top 25 upset? So an unranked team to beat a top 25 team. I'll go first.
Yeah.
I think SMU, coached by Andy Enfield, they were just ranked. This is kind of cheating in a way, but they had a loss to Duke, so they dropped out of the top 25. I think they beat Virginia, who I believe is number 14, and that game is on Saturday. You want to give me a ranked team? Don't tell me Arizona against UCF.
No.
Shane.
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say Oklahoma over Florida, which is kind of crazy since
that's a good bet. I looked at that. Yeah.
But Florida is very Jekyll and Hyde this year. And we saw that. I think if Arizona played Florida now, Arizona would have won that game by double digits. Arizona was kind of figuring themselves out that first game. But Florida, they've had some impressive wins. They destroyed Tennessee last week, but I think they're going to, it's tough to win on the road. It's going to be in Oklahoma. I will take Florida to lose and promptly fall right back out of the top 25.
Let's make a couple of picks. Arizona against ASU on Wednesday night. The Wildcats have just been burying teams. I actually think I am underestimating how bad this game could be at McHale Center. I'm going Wildcats by 23, which should be the spread. I mean, I think the spread's right around 20 would be my guess, but I'm going Wildcats by 23. You going more or less?
Well, Arizona's MO lately is, like, regardless of who they play, is to get up by double digits in the first few minutes and then kind of stand pat. So I feel like maybe speaking of getting bored, I feel like that might happen in this game where maybe Arizona gets up by 25-30 at some point and then ASU gets a ridiculous backdoor cover. So I'll say Arizona by 18, even though it really won't be that close.
Now, on the road at UCF this weekend is tricky. UCF is not a bad team. Johnny Dawkins, a pretty good coach. This is going to be a tricky game. I can't tell you I would be stunned if Arizona lost. I mean, they have to lose one of these games, you'd think, but the way that they played against TCU the other night was enough to show me that they're going to find a way to survive this. I think Arizona wins this game by 6 with a few free throws at the end, but this one I think will be uncomfortable once again. What do you say?
I agree with you for the most part. I don't think it's going to be quite that close. I actually had the TCU game closer than you and Blair did last week, but I'm going to go the opposite direction. I'm going to say Arizona by 10. UCF is kind of the opposite of TCU in Ken Palm. They have a better offense than defense. I think Arizona will be able to score pretty easily. UCF, I mean, they only lost 2 games. One of them was to undefeated Vanderbilt. There's nothing in particular that I think is really scary about them. They are a pretty deep team. They have 10 players that average over 10 minutes a game and at least 5 points per game. They shoot 37.5% from 3, which isn't bad. And it's going to be in Orlando. But I think Arizona finds a way to win. I think their first loss is going to be coming. I don't think it's going to come this soon. Arizona by 10.
All right. Well, we shall see how it holds up. Let's hope another week of Wildcats staying undefeated and another boring episode of Wildcat. Hey, I'm all for it. Let's keep it going until March, because all the episodes starting in February are
going to have to get
really
gimmicky the rest of the month and maybe have some crazy guests on or something to get people to keep listening, because people get, I don't want to say sick and tired of winning, because you never get tired of it, but it's the same thing every week, and it's kind of like Arizona weather in the summer.
You know who we will not be ever having on the program, who said he will never come on a podcast, is Tommy Lloyd. So that's unfortunate.
No.
As much as I'd love to have Coach on, great guy, it will probably never be on the show.
We have had Jack Murphy on. We've had TJ Benson on, and we had Steve Robinson on when he was coaching. So the assistants are all willing to come on. Maybe we'll try to get one of them again. But Tommy doesn't deal with the podcasters, sleep in their parents' basements, or what was it he said to you? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. One guy who does enjoy coming on podcasts is Matt Muehlebach, and we always appreciate having him on the program. So thank you, Matt. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.